What's happening, everyone? Welcome into another edition of the Why Am I a Mets Fan podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston, and I am joining you from my parents' bathroom. I'm on Long Island. I needed a quiet spot, so I'm just gonna beat you all to the comments. There is a bathtub back there, and there is a shower. That's what it is. Hi, Ashley. How are you doing?
Looks like a beautiful bathroom, I would just
Thank
like to
you.
say. Great
Yeah, I
taste
mean,
from your mother, whoever designed that. Very nice.
yeah. No, Alyssa doesn't play.
Yeah. Um, Hello everyone. We come to you live a couple of days after the Mets signed their consolation prize of the winter meetings in old friend Jorge Polanco. Yes, I'm already labeling him as an old friend. Um, they signed Jorge Polanco to a 2-year, $40 million deal. Guy's been on the Mariners the past couple years. Certainly, I would say an impactful part of that Mariners lineup last year in their run throughout the playoffs. He was a Twin for like 10 years. So this is what David Stearns cooked up to tantalize us after the significant losses that we endured this week.
Right. I mean, listen, I hit up one of our actual friends. What do we call people who are really friends, not an old friend?
Friends of the program.
Friends of the program. A friend of the program, Nico Tamorian, who held the job that I have now at CMY Central, which is where we work, if you guys didn't know that. It's a station in Syracuse, which is where we're based. Um, I said, hey, like, is Polanco any good? Because he works in Seattle now as a sports director. His name's Nico. And he said he was awful in 2024, but battling a knee injury that he tried playing through. He was very good for them in 2025, especially in the ALDS, drilled 2 homers off Skubal and had the walk-off hit to clinch the series in the 15th. He played way more DH than second base, and it's probably the only reason he stayed healthy most of the way. But if the Mets just need a decent bat with a dose of clutch, then he'll do fine. A little streaky, but fine. Now, again, fine, it doesn't excite me, but I think that that's an honest assessment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, first of all, love that assessment from Nico. Second of all, so funny that he said that because I was just talking about the Polanco signing with somebody else, and they were like, does it move the needle for you? Like, how do you feel about it? I feel fine about it. It's fine. It's nice enough, but it's not thrilling. It certainly doesn't make up for the significant losses that we've taken in the past week or so. But it's fine. I mean, he doesn't hurt the lineup. Last year he hit 265, 326 OBP, 26 home runs, 78 RBI. Okay, 26 home runs. He puts a little bit of pop back in the middle of your lineup that you are missing with the departure of Pete Alonso. Is he Pete Alonso's replacement? I think that's an absolutely outrageous thing to even suggest or compare the two. Um, but I mean, you look at it too, and not to just immediately bring up the concerns with Polanco, but there are some. Last year, he's coming off of what was one of the best seasons he's ever had throughout his career at the plate. He's also 32. David Stearns outlined this whole vision of, trying to get younger, trying to get more athletic, trying to focus on run prevention and defense. I'm not really sure how Jorge Polanco actually fits any of those bills. He's not younger. He is not known defensively, probably going to DH most of the time. So that I'm kind of like grasping at straws with like how exactly he fits the vision. I know where he fits the vision in terms of contract. His contract is, 2 years, which Stearns has shown a real penchant for liking those shorter term things. Um, but it's also just a little curious to me because he's been a middle infielder, like a second baseman throughout the bulk of his career. And the New York Post is reporting that the Mets really intend to use him primarily at first base and as DH, as Nico was saying. So I don't know. I mean, he certainly brings some versatility. I guess if you want to look at the positives, like he's a switch hitter, he can hit decently well from both sides of the plate. He can play multiple infield positions, so that gives the Mets some flexibility to move him around. But other than that, it's fine.
Mm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think fine is the best way to describe it. Not great, not good. And I think mostly what it leaves me with is a feeling of confusion, a feeling of where exactly are we headed now, and what exactly was David Stern's vision all along? From my vantage point, I'll tell you what I think's going on. I think he's signing some of these guys to, 2-year deals, whatever it is. He's trying to keep the deals that he's making on the shorter side because he hopes and fully believes that, some of these younger guys that they've been working for a really long time to develop are going to be the answer in a few years. And he's sort of trying to bide his time a little bit now, throw a couple of things at the problem for the next few years so that when it is time for these younger guys to step up, he can be like, see, this is what I was building all along. But honestly, it sort of just feels like the Mets are in limbo. It kind of feels like you need to pick and choose here. Like, are you just not going to make the team for this year really any better at all in hopes that you'll be able to hold on to some of these younger prospects and then they'll be able to push this team forward? Or are you really trying to reinvent the wheel? Are you trying to have a completely new core? Because if that's the case, then you got to start signing guys like now. Like we need to really get going here because all I keep on coming back around to, my dad assures me I have to wait until the offseason is over. But quite honestly, the Mets haven't gotten better. That was true last week, it was true the week before, and it's still true now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree with what you said about Stearns liking some of these shorter term contracts because he does think some of the young guys, some of the prospects coming up through the system can pan out. That's all fine and great. But you know what else I think? I do think, and we're going to get into like a broader discussion about this in a minute, but I think that if the vision for Stearns and Steve Cohen in the Mets front office truly has shifted to more of a, we'll get him in 2027. I don't know if that's the case. I'm just speculating. If that is the case, though, I do think fans deserve some transparency in a sense because, with last year ending the way that it did, the utter collapse down the stretch, the heartbreak on game 162, they missed the playoffs after all that last offseason was with signing Juan Soto. I do think that fans just deserve some honesty if the strategy here is going to be to pivot. Now, obviously, it certainly might be. We've seen in the last week them letting some really bona fide stars, homegrown stars at that, walk out the door for cheaper options. It feels like we're settling quite a bit this past week or so. It feels like we're settling for maybe, plan C, plan D. And that's never a place that you want to live in. It doesn't feel good as a fan. I guess all I'm saying is with what Steve Cohen promised when he bought the team, with the vision that David Stearns has, if they have shifted to some sort of alternate, get them in 2027 type mentality, I know they're not going to come right out and say that, but we deserve some transparency about that. I mean, in 2024, that actually was the narrative. And then the Mets went on a surprise run to the NLCS. If you remember, before the 2024 season, Mets front office and David Stearns was kind of like 2025 is our year. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for them to do that. Um, I just think circling back to Polanco, it doesn't move the needle. Nothing that they have done yet has moved the needle at all to me. They have not gotten better, like you said. And honestly, I see where Stearns likes the versatility and I see where he likes the length of the contract for the 2 years. But $20 million a year for Jorge Polanco feels like kind of a lot. I'm not going to sit here and you know, squabble about a 2 year deal, average annual value. I get it, it's only 2 years. But I saw this stat on Fangraphs that per Fangraphs, Polanco has exceeded $20 million in value once in the last 4 years. And that was last season, 21 million per year. I mean, he's an okay hitter. I talked about the pros and the cons, but giving him 20 million bucks a year after not even really considering like an Alonso at 30 or some other bigger fish that they have not yet signed feels a little curious to me. That felt like a pricey amount for Jorge.
I get it, and that doesn't necessarily feel like Stern's style, which is why I said, listen, maybe more is coming. Maybe they are going to have some big time trade with the Padres that's going to blow everything out of the water and it's going to make us have to come back on here at some random ass time and discuss things in a totally different way. I sort of hope that is the situation. But I agree with you on the transparency front. Listen, no GM, whatever it is, GM, owner, anyone, no one is going to come out and say, you know what? We are not competing this year. We are holding the cards on this year before the season even begins because then nobody would come and business would drop and the seats would be empty. Nobody would ever say that. But I think there's a way to say that you're gonna, you're a little bit future thinking now. You're a little forward thinking. You're trying something different. I mean, listen, even Terry Collins was going on SNY and whatnot and making some pretty good points about the fact that the Mets and this particular core just didn't win a lot. I mean, they had a great year in 2024, which was unexpected, quite honestly, and was not promised. And then in 2025, the year that was promised, and they had the biggest offside, the biggest offseason signing like ever, like amounted to nothing. And it like literally
Right.
amounted to nothing besides losing to Miami in game 162. It was fun. I enjoyed it for the first part of the season, but there was like a legitimate collapse, a legitimate downfall, and a legitimate 3 months where you and I were sitting at each other like, what even is this team? I don't know. Maybe it was a culture thing. And those are the kinds of things that maybe I just want more details on. Like, it's easy for us to both sit here and say that the team didn't get better. But if the culture in some way really was toxic, then like let's just say you found that out. Tomorrow, breaking news, I don't know. Nemo and Alonso had a feud with Lindor. Would you feel like the team got better then if that was the case?
I mean, I don't know. That's a hard question to answer because I do think, which maybe is what we're seeing, I do think Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto are your two superstars who are signed here for the next however long. I think Lindor's 6 more seasons. Like, you do have to build around those two guys. There's
Hmm.
really no other way around it. You've promised them the most money. Those are your guys. So, to some extent, I guess I would look at that and say, okay, they did what needed to be done. But I don't know. We've heard the rumblings on Nimmo maybe didn't like the idea of Lindor being named captain. Maybe I understand that. Nimmo was here for longer. He was a homegrown guy. He was on the team, all the way throughout his career. So I don't know how much of kind of like the clubhouse rumory stuff that's circulating in the New York media is true. I think we'll continue to find out more as the offseason kind of goes along. But we'll see. I don't know. Jorge Polanco to me is just sort of a menial addition. I hope that we have much bigger ones to talk about as the offseason goes along. But on top of that, we got Jorge Polanco. The Baltimore Orioles got Pete Alonso, and the Dodgers got Edwin Diaz. And we had to watch that all play out this week on our screens and our timelines. And let me tell you, that was not a pleasant experience. Pete Alonso in an Orioles jersey, it doesn't look right. I'm just going to say it. It looks weird.
Yeah, that looked off. But I hate to say this, like Edwin Diaz in that Dodgers jersey, like he actually looked low-key sharp.
No, he did, and I hate that. Just makes me want to die.
It just true. It's true
It
though.
is.
He looked like he was comfortable. Like he looked like he was like, "Hey, this is my home from now on." Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think when you see that, you feel that additional sting because I think when you see them put on new jerseys, it's the first time that it becomes real. Again, we both had a little bit of time to process what has happened over the past few weeks. The Alonso one does not bother me as much as Diaz. Diaz bothers me the most, and it's not particularly close because it's not just the fact that you let him walk. It's the fact that you let him walk away to them. You know?
To
Like if
them.
to them. Like no offense, like I love you guys as fans. But like as a Mets fan, it's like wouldn't even that, like even just the threat of him going to the Dodgers when that's the one piece that they were missing, wouldn't even the threat of that motivate you and inspire you to want to pay a little bit more?
I would absolutely think so, but I'm not David Stearns. That's what I said right when they signed him, is even the actual thought and concept of the Mets, if they are so lucky to get to a playoff position where they are playing the Dodgers and Edwin Diaz is going to come out and face you and they're going to do the whole bit with the trumpets and shit at Dodger Stadium, the fact that that is now real life should have been enough, in my opinion, to do whatever you had to do to re-sign him. But that's not what happened. Um, I obviously have said multiple times, I agree with you that Diaz was a much bigger loss. I have sort of been, though, coming around to an idea after seeing the Alonso proceedings this week kind of play out in Baltimore. I think that Alonso was a much bigger loss for the fans, like emotionally. Diaz is a much bigger loss on the field because I think that late inning relief comes at such a premium and he was great at it. And now you have to kind of grasp at straws to see if Devin Williams can replace him, 75% of the way. But Alonso, I just think really hits home for Mets fans because it's like that loss of what could have been. Like now we're always going to stare at Pete Alonso in Baltimore and he's whatever, 31, he's going to play for, 7, 8 more years and we're all going to be like, "Man, this guy could have just been, the next great Met. He could have gone into Cooperstown as a Met if that's what's in front of him. He could have continued to break Mets offensive records aside from the home run one. He could have had his number up in the rafters at Citi Field." So I think that Alonso emotionally cut people really deep. But I also think that we need to have a conversation on like the things sort of revealed, maybe about the Mets at these two events. Pete Alonso, introduced in Baltimore, said he, quote, found the transparency of the Orioles refreshing. I don't know what he's referring to there or referencing or how it relates to the Mets, but it is interesting to hear he finds the transparency of another team appealing. He said that as things kind of started to shake out in free agency, he knew like far and away he felt comfortable in Baltimore. He felt comfortable with the people he was meeting in the front office. I don't know what that exactly insinuates about David Stearns and company because David Stearns is out here before this happened at the winter meetings saying, we'll be in touch with Pete Alonso. I'm not sure that the communication with these players is where it needs to be.
I completely agree. I think it's really well said because, for him to say that he would feel more comfortable there when this is an organization that he has been with for legitimately his entire professional career. I mean, he had a baby and he's lived here for 6 years and they loved New York City. Him and his wife so clearly love New York City and love being here.
Haley Alonso's letter to the fans on social media nearly sent me off a bridge, like literally
I
a bridge.
I understand. It was really emotional. It was really compelling. Like it made you realize how much she even loved being here, which is why, again, just curious. That's the word that keeps coming to mind. I don't even know if I'm upset or angry necessarily, but it's just like, I don't know. You can't convince me that that's a guy who didn't want to stay here. I feel like everything that we hear behind the scenes was the fact that Pete Alonso did want to be a Met, you know? And mind you, I feel like we shan't, that there was an offer for him at one point for 7 years that he did not take.
Correct.
So he could have been a Met for longer, realistically, but I get it why he bet on himself. It obviously paid off for him. And I think that the Orioles showed him that he was valued in a way that the Mets didn't. I get it that this is a business, but I think the Orioles looked at him as a human being and they were like, we are going to set you up for success for a really long time. Come play for us. So he was like, okay, I will.
Yeah, I think that's where you start to look at things from a Mets perspective. I'm not going to sit here and argue that, 6 more years or 5 more years of Pete Alonso was actually the best decision for the Mets. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. In all likelihood, they would have probably regretted the back end of that contract. In sports, sometimes there are signings for your star, your homegrown guy, the face of the franchise that you kind of know you're going to regret the back end of the contract in all likelihood, but you do it anyway because that's just what you do. I'm
Mhm.
not saying the Mets should have done that here. I honestly am still sort of split on how I feel about the whole Alonso thing. Like I said all along, I didn't feel like it was 100% of a need. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right to say that he definitely felt valued in Baltimore. And what is making these Mets players feel not valued? Because you got Alonso saying that about the transparency. You got Diaz just openly saying he wanted to go to a winning organization, which, God help me, we know the Dodgers are that. However, like the guy spent the last 7 years in New York, was very in tune like with whatever was happening with the Mets. If he did really have a belief that the Mets were going to turn into a winning organization, he probably would have wanted to be a part of that. You know what I mean? Like he was so close to everything. And then you have Brandon Nimmo gets traded to Texas and he says that he was taken aback by the idea that he would even be traded. Evidently, there's some communication mishaps going on here. David Stearns could prove all of us wrong and put a complete winner on the field. The Mets could go to the NLCS and the World Series in 2026. It certainly doesn't look that way, but it could happen. But what's happening right now, I think, is more of an indictment on like Stearns's, I guess, operational skills with the players and his communication style with the players. And it's all the more ironic by the fact that in 2024, when everything was rosy and we were in the NLCS, coming off of that offseason, you sign Juan Soto, and the whole narrative around the whole thing is, oh, we have this family culture, and everybody loves Steve and Alex Cohen, and the Mets are just this family atmosphere. It's so great. How does that do a complete and utter 180 in 1 year's time with the same personnel? That's odd to me.
Do you think that Soto played a part in it? Do you think it was actually Soto coming here?
I mean, maybe. We've discussed I think it has the potential to be less maybe Soto himself. Soto, I don't think we talked about this. Wants to be a leader. He's more than happy to let Lindor or Nimmo previously kind of fulfill that role. Soto wants to come to work every day, hit the baseball, and go home like to his family and his mom and stuff who he openly loves and adores. That's fine. There is a part of me that does think for $765 million, you probably wanted to sign a leader. That's just not Juan Soto. We're going to have to make peace with this year. We're going to have to make peace with it for the next many years. I think more than anything, what the Soto signing showed the rest of the team, like, does Pete Alonso probably feel more disgruntled, even though he's not the exact same player as Juan Soto? After what happened with Soto, yes, you don't prioritize Alonso, your homegrown guy who's been here for 7 years, who's given his heart and soul to New York, over a guy that you're signing in free agency in Juan Soto. So I think more than anything, the Soto stuff probably just like stood out negatively to the rest of the players in kind of their own negotiations.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the last points I'll make on it is just I think the Soto signing, if anything, makes me feel confused even more because it's like, what was the point, in a way, of signing this really big time star just to kind of cheap out on everyone else around him? Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
I understand that like this season didn't go the way that people thought it was going to. It didn't go according to plan, and that's part of the reason why they have to really shake things up.
I don't know what happened to
I don't
Megan.
know.
Hello.
I don't know either. Sometimes if you just wipe it off, sorry, you guys, we work in local news. If you wipe it off with like a napkin or something, it will go away. I'm gonna
All
keep
right, you
talking
keep
while you
talking. You
figure it
keep
out.
talking. Sure.
Here I go. Here I go. Listen, I just think, what was the point of getting a guy like Soto when now you're not gonna build around him? Like I just feel, yeah, that's better. You're good. You're good. See, I told you it helps.
It needed to focus,
Um, lock in camera.
literally.
You know what? I just feel like what was the point of doing that and shelling out all this money, beating out everybody, probably overpaying, which is what everybody said then. Wow, that's a crazy number. Just to then not spend money on like some of these guys who Mets fans have really loved and adored for a long time. I mean, listen, Soto is a great player, but like you said, nobody is really having the emotional connection to Soto that they would to other guys on the team, like Nemo, like Alonso, because those are the guys who have been here for a really long time. So I don't know. I'm just a little bit confused by the strategy. I feel like Soto's just getting older. Every year he's getting older, and every year that's another year that Lindor and Soto are getting older. And I just don't know that I'm 100% on board with the idea of waiting around until the next round of prospects is ready to go in hopes that they all get better. Because hope is not a strategy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I know there's a lot of offseason left, and that's what people are going to say. And I agree with your thinking in terms of we can't waste Soto's prime and Lindor's prime. Not to even mention, there's an opt out in that Soto contract. Soto's not actually going to be here for 14 years, folks. He is going to opt out of that contract in whatever it is, 4 or 5 more years. So you have to capitalize in that time frame. And I think that we'll see what happens, but it would be curious to me to punt on 2026 in a way or to let the young guys, figure it out in 2026 because you only have so many of these years with these two guys in their prime. So I don't know. A Kyle Tucker signing or a Cody Bellinger signing could happen tomorrow, but as of right now, that's where we're at.
Yeah, I agree. Final thoughts on any of this stuff that we've been discussing now, and then we'll get out of here.
Final thoughts, I think that the blowback from like what did not happen at the winter meetings for the Mets has been pretty strong from fans, from media, really just nationally in terms of a baseball scope. And I think that I was thinking about this today. I think that some of it is, this is going to sound weird, but bear with me for a minute, is almost a testament to Steve Cohen because this is a product of kind of the expectations that he has reset in Queens. In the Wilpon years, nobody would have been surprised that Pete Alonso would take a walk. Of course he would. Now, under Steve Cohen, you have a legitimate expectation for better. And so, as I've brought up many times throughout this week, I think that's where that's really hitting home for people. The front office showing the hesitancy that it's shown in the past week is odd, not to even mention they're simply going to have to figure it out because they have too many holes right now to fill a team. They need a first baseman, they need an outfielder, they need starting pitchers, they need relief help. Like there's so many needs for this team still. But just expectations wise, I guess in a weird twisted sense, Steve Cohen should A, figure out what the hell is going on, but B, maybe be happy that fans have kind of been, I guess, trained to feel like we deserve better in New York in the 5 years that he's owned the team.
I agree. If anything, it's a compliment to him, right? It's a compliment to, I think, what fans really thought could happen once he took over as the owner. And I still believe in him. I have to say, like, of all people, I still believe in Steve Cohen. I think he could do a really good job, and I think he cares more about the Mets than damn near anybody. It's just a matter of figuring it out and making sure that he does truly trust David Stearns. And if it turns out that he doesn't, and things aren't going according to plan, then I'm going to want to see a change. Beyond that, not sure what I can say until next week. But thank you guys as always so much for coming. Please sure to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. Road to 15,000 begins now. We are not too far away. So thank you guys so much for that. We really appreciate it. Take care. Have a great week. We'll see you back here when the next big thing happens.